We're always wondering, with the trade deadline looming in mid-April, which big-name players might just be on the move. We start with Filip Forsberg. There was a time where no one thought he could ever be on the move, and certainly with the way the Preds have been playing, it's a fair question. Stu?
No, not on the move. Not even if they were 7th in the Central. I don't think he's on the move. And for this reason, he's really, really good at hockey.
Yes.
Number 2, I think there's a little sentimentality for David Poile with respect to young Filip Forsberg. Remember, go back to 2013. He picked the pocket, David Poile did, of a desperate George McPhee in Washington trying to make the playoffs. Gave Marty Erat for Filip Forsberg, and that has never looked anything but good on David Poile.
Yeah, no,
I don't know that you're going to give that up.
No, I agree. And, you know, I think if the Predators really fell off the table, so to speak, with in the division, then maybe, you know, if you're looking to really retool things. But I'm with you, Stu. He's just a really good player, and he helps you win. And this team, they've invested a lot in a lot of different guys within this group, and they've kind of found their way. I go back a couple of weeks ago to a Monday afternoon game, of all things, in Tampa. You would have thought it would be a tough spot for the Preds. They played really well. They played with a lot of energy in that game, even though Yossi was out. They've had others out. They got a win there, and they've taken off. And then Jussi Saros has played so well. So for me, I'm keeping Filip Forsberg right where he is.
Next candidate, high character. He's the captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets, Nick Foligno. What do you think, Grimmer?
This would be, for me, you know, to your point, character guy, glue guy, battle-tested veteran, plays in a variety of situations. I think could really play higher in the lineup depending on where he ends up as well. But Nick Foligno is a guy for me, and I think would relish the opportunity for a change of scenery, given all that Columbus has gone through over time and where Columbus is stationed right now. Florida, I thought, might be a pretty good fit. A nice depth pluck for a club like Florida. Again, a guy that can play in a variety of situations, a nuts and bolts, gritty penalty killer, that kind of thing. I don't know that you can have too many of those guys around, especially in a circumstance, an environment like the current.
And Bill Zito, who is the current general manager of the Florida Panthers, was the assistant GM in Columbus, so he's very familiar with Nick Foligno, who is, again, in the final year of his contract, so he is kind of a rental. He can be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. He is someone that's one of the faces of that franchise in Columbus. But for me, if he does get moved, the place I would really love to see him land is with the New York Islanders, because I just think he'd be such a good fit there. I think he's a good fit in Florida,
too.
Plays
Barry Trotz hockey.
He plays that kind of hockey, right? Yeah. He would fit right in. You could move him up and down the lineup. Mostly play on the left side. They're without Anders Lee right now, so he could slide into that role, but he could play the middle a little bit as well. Yeah. And he brings that sandpaper and that fire to an Islanders team that is ticking closer to being a team that maybe can win the whole thing. So I think that'd be a good spot. But I like Florida, too. That's not a bad place for him either, because they need play. They've tried to get players and add players like that. He would be another one.
You said fire. Sam? How about Sam Bennett? What do you think?
Yeah, I like Sam Bennett to move. I really do. We heard these rumors early on in a pandemic-shortened season, but I think there's a lot of upside for a potential suitor out there for a Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett is a pretty solid NHL forward. He's a guy that typically is double-digit goals every year he plays, has really had a bear of a time fitting into the right spot in Calgary over time. But how do you like this one, EJ? I like him in Tampa Bay. Okay. 24 years of age, restricted free agent. There may still be a little more ceiling left for a guy like Sam Bennett, and you never know until he ends up on a different roster. But, I mean, I love the depth they've got there already, but think of him as a fourth-line center between Joseph and Maroon on the other side. You've got the makings there of a really solid fourth line. I think Bennett could be a needle mover for a club like Tampa Bay. Just the right amount of tweak, nothing too disruptive as you kind of transition into the postseason.
Yeah, and, you know, he's been one of these guys, too, that has played better in the playoffs. And you've probably seen guys like that in your own playing career, and certainly since then, who are guys that, for whatever reason, during the regular season, they're in and out. But in the playoffs, they get dialed in, and Sam Bennett's someone that can bring a little bit of a physical element to it. For me, I had the same line of thinking that you had. I thought maybe the Colorado Avalanche as another depth player to add to the skill group that they have there. So that would be a team that I think it might be a fit. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Sam because he has been someone that his name has been out there. And again, someone in that group on a team that wants Sam Bennett has to believe he's a fit and he can help us in the postseason. I think Colorado, because they were in the same, in the West, in the same division, they've seen that a little bit in the past.
EJ mentioned what Colorado's seen in the past. The value of goaltending depth was a painful reminder for them of last year's playoffs. Yeah. Why not a Ryan Miller, Stu?
Oh, yeah? You like Ryan Miller on the move?
Could it be?
I do as well. I like Ryan Miller on the move, without question. I think it gives certainly Ryan Miller willing to take on a change of scenery, I think, without question. And for me, your potential fit is a club that is solidly positioned in the for the postseason, obviously, but somebody that's looking for maybe somewhat of an insurance policy. Pittsburgh, for me, I thought made a lot of sense. Now, Jari went down last night. No expectation that that's a longer-term situation. But the point I'm making is, with respect to a Miller, I think I come out on this side of it. If Jari did end up being a longer-term problem, or he did, say his game dips during the postseason or as we round into the postseason, I got more confidence in a Miller than I do in a DeSmith as time kind of wears on. That's a nice insurance policy for me. And look at new management, goaltender Ron Hextall. He's got a pretty good feel for that position. If he's looking to tinker, that might be the spot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Ryan Miller decides to do because he's a veteran guy, been in the league a long time now. And you would think with guys like that, sometimes they have sway with management. I want to go, I don't want to go. I know that his wife is an actress. He likes living in the Southern California area. So he might just be someone that likes being in Anaheim.
She doesn't have to come.
Well,
she doesn't have, sometimes they don't.
You take it up with him and her. That's all I would say.
Be more with her.
Dude, you're a little bit of a scoundrel right now. You're a little bit of a scoundrel with that.
You've been dying to work that way.
Yes, but I would say this. If he were to want to go somewhere, I've been saying this, again, I go back to the Avalanche, is that Philip Grubauer has been terrific for that team this year, but what's behind him in case he were to get hurt? And he got 2 injuries last season that really hurt them. So
last 2 postseasons, they have been crippled at that position.
Exactly. Yeah. So
let's talk about a 2-time Cup winner, Dustin Brown. There was a time where people thought his contract was untradeable. Yeah. What about now?
And you go league-wide this year over that block of games that maybe spanned 15 or more, Kopitar and Brown together. The league got back on its heels as going, Dustin Brown? Like, where did Dustin Brown come from with the pace that he and Kopitar were kind of rattling off? So I think there's a good fit out there in Nashville for somebody like a Dustin Brown. He's a guy, again, that wouldn't embarrass you playing in your top 6, could be very effective there. And he's kind of a drag the rest of the gang to the fight kind of a guy. A lot of grit, a lot of sandpaper in a Dustin Brown.
Yeah, he's benefited this year in L.A. They've taken him off the penalty kill. So those are hard minutes. And so he's a little bit fresher, and it is shown in his play this year. You can see the goals. He's had the 14 goals for the L.A. Kings. You think about that contract, taking it on. We're at the end of it now, so it's more palatable. Yeah. He's someone that has had Stanley Cup experience, and he is playing well right now. So that's a team that thinks they can win this year, puts them over the edge. The name that comes to mind right away is because they've had success with a former LA King before is the Carolina Hurricanes. Because they had Justin Williams, and he came in there and helped them, and maybe someone like Dustin Brown. That team is close, and he's had that championship pedigree. So that could be a spot if they could afford it.
Playoff hockey, very physical, lots of hits. Only Mariah Carey this century has more hits than Dustin Brown. True story. Last one, and this one is out of left field. Jack Eichel. What do you think?
I don't think so. And here's the thing. I mean, it would take a really impressive package to pry Jack Eichel out of Buffalo under the circumstances. Because they're in a rebuild, To me, I think at this point, that's kind of the cornerstone. I don't know that you're prepared to part with Jack Eichel, again, unless some overwhelming package were presented to you, and Kevin Adams and ownership there is just, well, we can't say no to that. Doubtful to me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of obstacles. First of all, he's hurt, and we don't know if he's going to be back during the regular season, although they're thinking perhaps he will be. So that's the first obstacle. The second obstacle is when you get to a trade deadline, there's only a handful of teams that could even entertain a move of this magnitude. You can see the $10 million cap hit. So that's another issue. You have a really small group of teams, if any, that could get involved. I think if you're the Buffalo Sabres, you figure out what you're going to do in terms of Kevin Adams. They're going to be bringing in some help, assistant GMs. Maybe they go out and bring in somebody to be over Kevin Adams, is kind of in that Brian Burke role in Pittsburgh, or Cam Neely in Boston. So maybe they do that as well. They have to hire a coach. I think they really need to take some time and take stock of their situation. I think there's still several good pieces in Buffalo. It's just kind of, it's gone down the tubes this year. So for me, I think you want to wait if you're the Buffalo Sabres. And then if you decide to move them at some point down the road, to your point, Stu, you have to get a very significant package of players back to make that worthwhile.